coming up on The World Today. Pope Francis leads Catholics in bidding farewell to former Pope Benedict XVI. And more travel misery for UK commuters as rail strikes continue. Welcome back. Pope Francis has given the homily for the late Pope Benedict XVI at his funeral in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. Around 50,000 mourners gathered for the Mass. According to the Vatican, it is unprecedented in modern times for a living Pope to bury his predecessor. The moment showing crowds arriving as day broke over the Vatican ahead of the funeral for former Pope Benedict, who died on Saturday, December 31, at the age of 95. Among the 50,000 people in attendance are official delegations from Italy and Benedict's native Germany. Other leaders, including the King and Queen of Belgium, and about 13 heads of state or government, attend in private capacity, while most countries are represented by their ambassadors to the Vatican.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen. The funeral mass began with Pope Francis presiding in St. Peter's Square.
Pax vobis.
Holding fast to the Lord's last words and to the witness of his entire life, we too as an ecclesial community want to follow in his steps, and to commend our brother into the hands of the Father. May those merciful hands find this lamp alight with the oil of the gospel that he spread and testified for his entire life.
After his funeral, Pope Francis bids an emotional farewell to his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, as he touches the coffin. And just as pallbearers carried the coffin of the former Pope Benedict away at the end of Mass, there was a wave of applause in St. Peter's Square, with faithful shouting, Sanctus subito, a phrase that means saint now in Italian. The coffin was taken back inside the basilica and encased in zinc before being sealed in a second wooden casket.
Well, it's kind of sad, the news about the death of the Pope, but of course it's a beautiful celebration, and I think it represents a lot about his life and what he expected. A simple celebration, but very beautiful.
Not really emotional, but impressive. It was really impressive. Because also I'm an atheist, so it's different for me. I'm not used to it.
Applause broke out across the vast cobbled esplanade, which was shrouded in mist, in a sign of respect for Benedict, a hero to Roman Catholic conservatives who shocked the world by resigning nearly a decade ago. For some who attended the funeral, it was a sad but meaningful day. Pope Benedict XVI is buried in a private service according to his wishes under St. Peter's Basilica. To all the stories, a former NATO Secretary General during a visit to Taiwan has said that democratic countries should make it clear the severe economic consequences China would face should it move against self-governed Taiwan. Mr. Andres Rasmussen drew a parallel between Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's military aggression towards Taiwan, saying democratic countries must work in unity to ensure a victory in Ukraine in order to deter a Chinese attack on Taiwan. China, which claims Taiwan as its own despite strong objections of the democratic island, has been ramping up pressure on Taiwan to assert its sovereignty claims, including almost daily Chinese Air Force missions near the island over the past 3 years.
The free world has shown impressive unity in response to the war in Ukraine, both in terms of weapons supplies, but also economic sanctions. Putin did not expect this, and we can be sure Xi Jinping is watching closely. Any attempt by China to change the status quo in Taiwan by force should spark an equally unified response. And we must make this clear to China now. All those who believe in a democratic Taiwan and a rules-based international order must work to ensure Ukraine prevails. It is for the people of Ukraine and the people of Taiwan to decide on their own futures. The free world must give them our support.
Well, to health, China will reopen the border with its special administrative region of Hong Kong at the weekend for the first time in 3 years as it accelerates the unwinding of stringent COVID rules that have battered its economic growth. Authorities say the opening on Sunday will bring the resumption of quarantine-free travel between the financial hub and the mainland, although it will be done in a gradual and orderly way. We'll hear more on the situation in Asia.
South Korea has joined the U.S. and a few other countries stepping up mandatory coronavirus tests on travelers from China. This comes after a Chinese national who tested positive for COVID-19 on arrival but went missing while waiting at a quarantine facility. Health officials and military officers decked in protective suits kept a watchful eye as travelers from China streamed through the arrival hall at Incheon International Airport before proceeding to a testing center nearby. According to South Korea's Health Ministry official, anyone who violates the Disease Control Act will be fined or imprisoned.
The person could be subject to up to 1 year in prison or 10 million won in fines if convicted of violating the Infectious Disease Control and Prevention Act. Also, the person will be deported and banned from entering the country for a certain period of time.
South Korean authorities say they were trying to track down the missing Chinese national who tested positive after arriving at the airport late on Tuesday. The person was transferred to a hotel to await admission to quarantine, but it went missing, according to a health official. And Japan will toughen its COVID-19 border control measures for travelers from China effective January 8th. According to Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, all travelers from mainland China will need to go through PCR tests or quantitative antigen tests upon arrival at the airport. Mr. Kishida was speaking to reporters at the nationally televised New Year news conference.
We will switch to quantitative antigen tests and PCR tests for travelers from mainland China upon arrival, and we will also require them to provide negative test results for passengers who will be on direct flight from China. Additionally, in order to take all possible measures for border control, we will continue to put necessary limits on additional flights from China.
Meanwhile, a local Beijing fever clinic and a nearby morgue appeared busy on Wednesday morning as China continues to battle surging COVID-19 infections after a dramatic U-turn from its original zero-COVID policy. China reported 5 new COVID-19 deaths for Tuesday, January 3rd, compared with 3 a day earlier, bringing the official death toll to 5,258, very low by global standards, but the toll is widely believed to be much higher.
Some people told me the government released the number that was the single-digit number of the deaths. That is totally ridiculous and not credible. As far as I know, my close relatives, among them, there are 4 died already. That is from one family. So I hope the government will honestly and credibly tell its people and people in the world what really happened here.
A UK-based health data firm, Affinity, has reported that about 9,000 people in China are probably dying each day from COVID.
Meanwhile, Germans living in China began receiving the BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine today, the first such rollout of a foreign coronavirus vaccine in a country that has not otherwise approved the use of non-local vaccines, even as infections soar. Under an agreement reached during a visit to Beijing by Chancellor Olaf Scholz in November, Germans aged 12 and older may receive their first dose or a booster of the BioNTech vaccine at a designated international hospital in Beijing, Shanghai, Shenyang, Guangzhou, or Chengdu. A 44-year-old German national said he traveled 4 hours from the port city of Qingdao in eastern Shandong province to get vaccinated.
I feel like it's nice that we finally got the vaccine. I think it's more effective than the Chinese vaccine, so it's nice to have that extra protection, especially since it's newer and better against Omicron.
I think I feel more protected, especially for the new variant, but it's not that much different to getting the Chinese vaccine in that sense. So.
Well, looking at China's economy, renowned investment guru Jim Rogers believes that the country's robust development will help the world tackle its intricate challenges as it emerges from its epidemic slump. Mr. Rogers, co-founder of Quantum Fund and Soros Fund Management, has publicly expressed his confidence in the Chinese economy on several occasions. He told local media that opening up the second largest economy in the world will serve as the key to solving many global issues.
The Asian market, Asian countries, are trying to work closer and closer together, including China, open more trade zones and have more trade. But for a while, things will feel good because China's opening up again, and we need China. The world needs China. China is the second largest economy in the world, and when they are strong, they help the world.
We head to the U.S. now, where Republican Congressman-elect George Santos briefly failed to respond to his name being called as the House of Representatives voted for a fifth time to elect a speaker yesterday. House reading clerk Susan Kerr repeated Santos's name twice before moving on to the next on the alphabetical list, John Sarbanes of Maryland. Santos waved his hand to attract her attention. The New York prosecutor's office said in December that it was investigating the conduct of Santos after reporting by the New York Times and other media outlets called into question almost every element of his life story. Mr. Santos said he had degrees from New York University and Baruch College, despite neither institution having any record of him attending. He also claimed to have worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, which was also untrue.
Santos. 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 Sarbanes. Jeffries. Scalise. McCarthy. Scanlon. Jeffries. Schakowsky.
Well, we are still watching that space as the US House Speaker race remains deadlocked. Let's go over to Britain, where British commuters are bracing for more railway disruption after the UK's National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers, RMT, stated that strike action will continue after the government blocked union members from negotiating with employers. Around 40,000 workers from 14 British train operators waged a strike on Wednesday, demanding better pay and conditions, bringing most rail services across the country to a halt. However, a statement released by the union said that some companies have reached agreements with workers, including on wage increases to ensure the operation of some trains. Euston Train in central London, one of the busiest intercity train hubs in the UK, saw a small but steady passenger flow Wednesday, though it was far less crowded than would be expected during a normal post-holiday rush hour.
Pandemic. Obviously, inflation has gone through the roof. People are struggling to keep their heads above water. They deserve a pay rise. They've worked all through the pandemic for the 3 years to keep the railway running. So the fight will continue. Obviously, the government's blocking all the train operating companies and our Network Rail to negotiate with us. Our General Secretary will be in talks next week. So we'll have to wait and see how we're going to go.
Meanwhile, British opposition leader Keir Starmer pledged today to end what he says is the short-termism that has led to crisis in the economy and public services, but that would not mean his Labour Party spending excessively if it won power. Mr Starmer's party has a double-digit lead in the polls over the governing Conservatives, and both parties are making their pitch to voters, many of whom remained undecided ahead of an election expected next year. A tumultuous year in British politics left Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister after his two predecessors were forced to quit, and he has to deal with a cost of living crisis, high inflation, mounting hospital pressures, widespread industrial action. And deprived of their trademark powdery snow by unusually mild weather, Switzerland's world-renowned ski slopes have proven a disappointment to winter sports, and resort managers eager to make most of the holiday season. Recent temperatures climbing as high as a record 20.9 degrees Celsius have severely disrupted operations at many ski resorts, even forcing some to temporarily close. In a resort village in the Vard Alps, only a handful of skiers could be seen descending a slope where a narrow pass of artificial snow had been laid to create a semblance of winter. Switzerland is warming at about twice the global average rate due to, in part, to the heating trapping effect of its mountains. And we are here in Nigeria, where the Lagos government has launched the Eco-Social Health Alliance package to accommodate more vulnerable persons in the state. The Director for Medical Administration Training and Programs in the state's Ministry of Health explains that 230,000 residents are currently benefiting from the free health insurance initiative.
The Lagos State government continues to work towards the Sustainable Development Goals, especially universal health coverage. The Eco-Social Health Alliance is the latest healthcare plan launched by the Lagos State Health Management Agency, which prioritizes vulnerable residents in Lagos to get access to healthcare insurance.
Gentlemen of the press,
State and private health officials converge on GRA Ikeja for the ceremony. According to the Lagos State government, since the commencement of access to care for vulnerable residents on the Ilera Eco Social Healthcare Plan in 2020, a total of 750 million naira has been disbursed as equity fund, in addition to the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund.
A total of 750 million has been disbursed as equity fund, in addition to the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. Currently, over 230,000 residents who fall under this group enjoy free health care on the scheme at no cost.
The Health Management Agency says it's committed to ensuring that equal opportunity is given to those who cannot afford to pay the Ilera Eco premium package.
Let me state here that it is the collective responsibility of every one of us to ensure that the vulnerable also enjoy the dividends of democracy and access care without having to run helter-skelter for soliciting funds to pay their medical bills out of pocket.
This platform serves as one of the accountability measures where everyone can see in real time how resources are utilized, as well as the vulnerable coverage. This has been designed to raise additional funds for the healthcare of the vulnerable and indigents in the state. As part of the accountability and transparency measures, a newsletter will be issued out quarterly on the progress of EcoSha.
No fewer than 230,000 indigent and vulnerable residents of Lagos State, including the elderly, people living with HIV and AIDS, as well as victims of domestic and sexual violence spread across all local government areas, are currently benefiting from free health insurance coverage sponsored by the Lagos State government through the Eco-Social Health Alliance.
We head to the Democratic Republic of Congo, focusing on the environment, something Patrick Sirimwani is passionate about. The Congolese artist is, helping to minimize environmental pollution. in his part of the country. His location is near the banks of Lake Kivu in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Take a look.
Patrick Chirimwami wades knee-deep through a mountain of plastic bottles, scooping as many as he can into a large sack. There is no public waste collection in the area, and the trash that ends up in Lake Kivu often causes breakdowns in the hydroelectric plant, leading to power cuts. But Patrick's goal is bigger than helping clean up. Later, he will melt down the plastic to make a thick liquid, which he uses to paint portraits of politicians, intended to be a condemnation of what he says is their inaction to protect the environment.
There have been many conferences in DR Congo, several meetings. But at these meetings, there was no mention of problems related to the destruction of the environment. No measures have been taken to protect nature. That is why, as an artist from the Democratic Republic of Congo, I can send a message along these lines.
Last month, the artist's portraits of political figures, from independence leader Patrice Lumumba to current President Felix Tshisekedi, were displayed at a cultural center in his hometown, Bukavu.
The big message today for the authorities, they must tell us how we're going to protect our environment. That's how I told myself that I must continue to use plastic waste such as bags, bottles, and use basins which I process and make drawings.
Congo, like other African nations, has insisted on its right to develop its economy by exploiting its vast natural resources. It has come under criticism for putting oil blocks up for auction in the world's second biggest rainforest. It has pledged to minimize the potentially devastating impact by using modern drilling methods and tight regulation. It also hosted talks before November's COP27 climate summit to call on rich nations to honor a pledge to developing nations to ensure fair finance to fight climate change.
What a talent. Well, staying in Africa, the UN peacekeeping mission, UNISFA, in South Sudan responded rapidly to quell violence in the village of Ramumra in the southern part of Abyei after an attack that resulted in 13 people being killed. The report was given by a UN spokesperson who was speaking to reporters in New York. According to him, the mission has launched an investigation into the incident.
Mission in the DRC is telling us that its Force Intervention Brigade has launched a joint operation with the Congolese Army. The operation aims to bolster ongoing efforts to protect civilians and to neutralize armed groups in the areas along the Beni, Semulike, Kamango, Nobil axis in North Kivu. The UN peacekeepers are also undertaking patrols along that axis to improve security, to allow freedom of movement of the population and security forces, and to help with the return of internally displaced people. The Central African Republic, UN peacekeepers there have also concluded a joint mission with the Central African Security Forces to better protect people in the country's west. Over a period of 1 month, peacekeepers conducted over 100 patrols and 30 aerial surveillance missions. They patrol several localities, including Bosangoa, Nanabakasa, Markunda, and Pawa. Military peacekeepers, also accompanied by civilian colleagues, provided medical services, distributed school equipment, and shared information about the threats of improvised explosive devices. Our peacekeeping mission in Abyei, otherwise known as UNISFA, has responded rapidly to quell violence in the village of Rumamer in the southern part of Abyei after an early morning attack that took place today. It resulted in 13 people being killed, 5 injured, and 27 homes being burned to the ground.
Well, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Ales Bialyatsky went on trial in Belarus today, facing up to 12 years in jail in a case his allies see as political retribution for his right to work. Video show the co-founder of the Vyasna human rights group sitting in court behind bars as proceedings took place. The 60-year-old is one of the most prominent of hundreds of Belarusians who were jailed during a violent crackdown on anti-government protests that erupted in the summer of 2020. Bialyatsky, who shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Russian rights group Memorial and Ukraine Center for Civil Liberties in October, was arrested in 2021, along with 2 co-workers from Viesna. Hang on to your baby bonnet. Self-driving technology is coming to strollers. A hands-free self-driving smart stroller has been making waves at CES in Las Vegas. Called Ella, the stroller is the brainchild of Vancouver-based husband and wife team, Anne Hunger and Kevin Hung, and their startup Gluskind. Hung came up with the concept for the stroller with his wife after the birth of their child in 2020. Hong and Hunger are eager to emphasize that the stroller will only self-drive or operate hands-free when a baby or toddler is not present inside the stroller. Definitely a premium product. Well, that's our show this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.